That Christmas bus ride to my grandparents' house changed my family forever. That Christmas bus ride to my grandparents' house was supposed to be simple, crowded, uncomfortable, a little chaotic, but harmless. That's what I thought. I didn't know it would be the last time my family could pretend everything was fine. I'm telling this story now because silence protected the wrong people for too long. And before I go any further, let me ask you something. Where are you listening from? Drop it in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone in this. My name is Rachel Miller, and every Christmas my family followed the same ritual. We didn't fly. We didn't drive separately. We all took the same long-distance bus to my grandparents' house, packed shoulder to shoulder like forced intimacy could replace honesty. It was my mother's idea years ago. Family should travel together, she'd say, as if proximity could fix fractures. This year, though, felt different from the start. The bus station smelled like burnt coffee and cold concrete. Christmas decorations hung crooked from the ceiling, trying too hard to feel warm. My family gathered in a loose circle. My parents, my younger brother, my aunt and uncle, a couple of cousins, and me, standing slightly apart, like always. I had learned early in life how to exist without being acknowledged. I was the one who carried bags, counted tickets, made sure everyone had snacks. I was useful, quiet, replaceable. The bus arrived with a hiss of air brakes, and we boarded in that familiar, awkward order. Couples first, elders next, then everyone else. I took a window seat halfway down the aisle. My mother sat 2 rows ahead of me with my aunt, already whispering. My father squeezed into the aisle seat across from my uncle, complaining about legroom. My brother dropped into the seat behind me, immediately pulling out his phone. No one asked how I was. The engine rumbled to life, and as the bus pulled onto the highway, Christmas lights blurred past the windows like distant promises. I pressed my forehead against the glass and told myself what I always did. Just get through it. The ride was supposed to take 6 hours. It only took 3 for the truth to start leaking out. It began quietly, a conversation not meant for me. My mother leaned back in her seat, her voice low but sharp enough to cut through the hum of the engine. "Once the holidays are over," she said, "we need to talk to Mom and Dad about the paperwork." My aunt chuckled softly. "It's time. They're not getting any younger." Paperwork. That word landed heavier than it should have. I didn't turn around. I didn't move. I just listened. My mother continued, her tone confident. The house should stay in the family. But realistically, it makes sense if it goes to someone responsible. Someone responsible. My stomach tightened. My aunt hummed in agreement. "Well, obviously not Rachel. She's never settled down." I felt my throat go dry. Never settled down. As if my life was unfinished simply because it didn't follow their script. My mother laughed quietly. "Exactly. She's always been independent. She won't need it." There it was. The familiar dismissal, dressed up as logic. I stared straight ahead, my reflection faint in the window. My face looked calm, practiced. I'd perfected that expression over years of swallowing things whole. Behind me, my brother shifted in his seat. "So it's decided then?" he asked, lowering his voice. "I get the house." My mother turned just enough to smile at him. "Of course," she said. "You've always been the one we could count on." I almost laughed. Count on. They said that like I hadn't been the one paying my parents' phone bills for years. Like I hadn't quietly covered medical expenses when insurance fell short. Like I hadn't been wiring money every month under the label loan, knowing it would never come back. The bus hit a pothole, jolting us slightly. Someone cursed under their breath. A child cried near the front. And still, the conversation continued. "We'll bring it up at Christmas dinner," my aunt said. "After dessert. Keep it light." I finally turned my head then, just enough to catch my mother's eye in the reflection of the aisle mirror. She didn't look back. She never did. I sat there, heart steady but heavy, realizing something with startling clarity. This trip wasn't about family. It was about control. About deciding who mattered and who didn't, without ever having to say it out loud. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. They thought I didn't hear. They thought I didn't know. What they didn't realize was this. I had been preparing for this conversation long before they ever got on that bus. And by the time we reached my grandparents' house, everything they believed about me, about themselves, was about to fall apart. Slowly, publicly, and permanently. The bus grew quieter after that. Not peaceful, just tense. People settled into their phones, their headphones, their private bubbles. My mother and aunt stopped talking, probably satisfied with what they'd already decided. My brother leaned back, confident in a future he believed was guaranteed. I sat there, hands folded in my lap, breathing slowly. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger would have been easier. Anger explodes. Anger gives people something obvious to fight against. What I felt instead was resolve. Because the truth was, my grandparents' house had never been just a house to me. It was the place I learned who I was, and who my family expected me to be. Every summer as a child, I stayed there while my parents worked. My grandmother taught me how to balance a checkbook before she taught me how to bake. My grandfather showed me how to fix things, not because he thought I'd need a man to do it, but because he believed competence was freedom. You don't owe anyone your silence, he used to say. I didn't understand that then. I did now. When the bus finally pulled into the small station near their town, night had already settled in. Snow clung to the edges of the streetlights, glowing softly like something sacred. My grandparents stood waiting, bundled in coats, my grandmother waving too enthusiastically, my grandfather standing tall and proud despite his age. They hugged everyone one by one. When it was my turn, my grandmother held me a little longer. "You look tired," she whispered. "I'm okay," I said. She didn't argue. She never did when she knew I wasn't ready to talk. The house smelled the same as it always had. Pine cleaner, coffee, something sweet baking in the oven. Familiar. Safe. For the first 2 days, everything stayed polite. Too polite. Laughter at dinner. Stories repeated for the 100th time. Compliments that didn't quite reach the eyes. And underneath it all, a current I could feel even when no one spoke. Christmas Eve came, and with it, the moment they'd been planning. Dinner was finished. Plates cleared. Wine poured. The fire crackled softly in the corner, pretending warmth could replace honesty. My aunt set her glass down with deliberate calm. "So," she said lightly, "Mom, Dad, have you given any more thought to the future, about the house?" There it was. My grandparents exchanged a glance. My grandmother smiled gently. "We have." My mother leaned forward, already prepared. "We just want to make sure everything is settled properly. You know, so there's no confusion later." No confusion. I watched my brother straighten in his chair. My grandfather nodded slowly. "That's exactly why we took care of it already." The room went still. Already? My mother blinked. "What do you mean?" My grandfather reached for the folder on the side table, one I recognized instantly. My pulse didn't spike. It steadied. "We updated our will last year," he said, "and we asked Rachel to help us make sure everything was done correctly." Every head turned toward me. My mother's eyes narrowed. "Rachel?" I met her gaze evenly. "Yes." My grandmother placed her hand over my grandfather's. She's been helping us for years, with bills, appointments, planning, without ever asking for anything. Silence pressed down on the room. My aunt frowned. That's very generous of her, but nothing. My grandfather said calmly. We didn't make this decision lightly. The house, he opened the folder, will go to Rachel. The word hung in the air like something fragile and unbreakable all at once. My brother laughed sharply. What? My mother's face drained of color. That doesn't make sense. It does, my grandmother said. To us. My aunt recovered first. Well, surely this can be discussed. It was, my grandfather replied, over many months, and it's final. My brother turned to me, disbelief flashing across his face. You knew! Yes, I said quietly. You didn't say anything, my mother demanded. I tilted my head slightly. No one asked. Her mouth opened, then closed again. And what about us? My brother snapped. What am I supposed to get? My grandfather closed the folder. Respectfully, he said. What you earn. The room erupted then. Voices overlapping. Accusations. My mother stood, pacing. My aunt gestured wildly. My brother stared at me like I'd betrayed him. But through it all, my grandparents remained calm. Because this wasn't impulsive. It was earned. You manipulated them, my mother accused me. I stood slowly, my voice steady. No, I said. I supported them when no one else showed up. I paid bills you didn't know existed. I listened when they were scared. I stayed. You're tearing this family apart, my aunt said. I shook my head. No. I'm just not holding it together for everyone anymore. My grandmother looked at my mother then, her voice soft but firm. You taught Rachel to be invisible, she said. We taught her to be capable. This is the result. The room fell silent again. This time, it was different. My mother looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. And I could see it then. Not anger, fear, because she finally understood something she'd never planned for. I wasn't the backup anymore. I wasn't the quiet one. I wasn't the one who would keep giving without being seen. And that Christmas bus ride, the one that started it all, hadn't just changed my family forever. It had changed me. After that night, nothing snapped back into place. There was no magical apology, no sudden understanding, no group hug that stitched everything together. Instead, there was distance. The kind of distance that doesn't scream. It settles. The next morning, Christmas Day, the house felt different. Quieter, but not peaceful. Heavy in a way that made every footstep sound louder than it should have. My mother barely looked at me during breakfast. My aunt whispered constantly to my brother, their voices sharp and clipped, like they were rehearsing a version of events where they were the victims. My grandparents, on the other hand, moved slowly but calmly. My grandmother hummed while setting the table. My grandfather read the paper like it was any other holiday morning. That told me everything. They weren't second-guessing themselves. Later that afternoon, my mother finally cornered me in the hallway near the guest room. You embarrassed us, she said quietly, like she didn't want the walls to hear. I met her eyes. I didn't say anything that wasn't already true. You could have warned us, she snapped. You let us walk into that blind. I took a breath. You never warned me when you decided I mattered less, she scoffed. That's not fair. No, I said. It's just uncomfortable. Her mouth tightened. You always play the martyr. I almost laughed. I played invisible, I said. You made me that way. I just stopped. She stared at me for a long moment, searching for something. Guilt, maybe, or weakness. She didn't find either. By the time we all boarded the bus to head back home 2 days later, the seating felt symbolic. My brother sat with my aunt. My mother took a seat alone. No one asked me where I wanted to sit. I chose a window seat near the back. As the bus pulled away from my grandparents' house, I watched it disappear behind snow-covered trees. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I was moving forward. Weeks passed. The calls slowed. The family group chat went quiet. At first, the silence felt strange, like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. But then I realized something important. Silence can be peaceful when you're no longer performing. My grandparents visited me often after that. We talked more openly than we ever had before. One evening, my grandmother took my hand and said, "We worried this would cost you your family." I squeezed her fingers. "I already paid that price a long time ago." She nodded slowly. "Then this isn't loss. Then it's alignment," she finished for me. That word stayed with me. Alignment. Not revenge. Not punishment. Just things finally lining up the way they should have all along. A few months later, the legal paperwork was finalized. Quietly, cleanly, no drama, no family meeting, no second announcement. The house was officially transferred, exactly as my grandparents intended. They didn't gloat. They didn't explain themselves to anyone who demanded answers. They didn't need to. My mother tried once more. She called late one evening, her voice softer than I'd heard in years. "You didn't have to let it go this far," she said. I leaned against my kitchen counter, phone pressed to my ear, listening carefully. Not for manipulation this time, but for truth. "I didn't take it far," I replied. "I just stopped stepping back." There was a pause. Then, quieter. "You've changed." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Yes," I said. "I had to." She didn't argue. That told me more than any apology ever could. My brother never brought it up again. Neither did my aunt. They adjusted. They had to. People always do when the person they leaned on finally stands upright. As for me, I didn't move into my grandparents' house right away. I didn't need to. Knowing it was there, safe, protected, respected, was enough. Sometimes, when I visit, I sit in the same chair by the window where my grandfather used to read. Snow still gathers along the fence in winter. The trees still whisper in the wind. But the house feels different now. Lighter. Like it finally belongs to someone who sees it not as an asset, but as a history. That Christmas bus ride didn't just change my family forever. It taught me something I wish I'd learned sooner. You don't need to fight for a place in a family that only values you when you're useful. You don't need to explain your worth to people who benefit from ignoring it. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stop holding everything together, because the moment you do, the truth has room to speak, and when it does, everything changes.